Welcome to this presentation on the structure of a deck. This is the second in a series of short videos about fundraising for startups and putting together an investor deck. My name is Lisa Sue. I'm a startup funding strategist in Los Angeles. I'm a longtime board member of Women Founders Network, and I've run the coaching program there for 5 years now. I'm a mentor at many accelerators here in Los Angeles, including Techstars, the Precelerator. I also prep founders for presenting at conferences like Salesforce's Dream Pitch Conference. And if I look familiar, you may have seen me featured in the Huffington Post, Business Rockstars, Startup Nation, Women 2.0. I get asked a lot about funding for startups, fundraising for women founders, and a lot of different startup and tech startup topics. But enough about me. This is a series of short videos about fundraising and putting together a first investor deck. It's definitely an overview series and not an exhaustive survey of fundraising and startups, but it's a good chance for me to answer some questions and clarify issues that come up. In particular, these videos should be helpful for entrepreneurs who are looking to grow their business and are exploring how to raise the necessary capital, entrepreneurs who are trying to raise capital who may have hit some roadblocks and are looking for a greater understanding of the process of raising capital, and also people who may have an idea for a business and are trying to get an idea of what may lie ahead if they take the plunge. Again, these are short videos about topics I get asked about regularly. They'll be on a range of topics that go from basic overviews to deeper, more specific points for those of you who are further along the funding journey. And these videos are completely modular. You do not have to watch all of them to get what you need. Again, you're all at different stages with different businesses. So don't overthink if you watch something and go, yeah, that doesn't seem to be me or my business. It's probably not you, at least not right now. So please feel free to take what you need and leave the rest. Now, this is the second in a short 3-part series on investor deck basics. The first video, which I did last week, was on what basically is a deck and was a short overview of investor decks. This video is about what does a deck look like, what is the structure of a deck, and why. And next week, we'll wrap up with the third video, which is on what do investors really want to see in a deck? What are the questions that you really need to answer? Now, with that short intro out of the way, let's get started. In the last video, I gave an overview of what a deck is, and today we're going to cover what a deck looks like. What is the structure of a deck, and why does it look that way? Now, the good news, the great news, is that you really do not need to overthink what the basic structure of a deck is. This is not the time to reinvent the wheel. The structure of investor decks really don't tend to vary a lot. They all tend to follow a very similar structure of 10 to 12-ish slides. And again, there's absolutely no need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes founders come to me and they're like, we want to rethink the process. And frankly, that's a waste of time and effort. There are many reasons why decks look the way they do. There are many very good reasons they look the way they do. And this really is not, the structure of the deck is not the thing to spend a lot of time thinking about. There are other things that you need to spend time and effort thinking about and putting together, and we'll talk about that. But the basic structure of a deck is pretty much always the same. And that is this. You start off with what is the problem or the gap in the market. You talk about how you're going to solve that problem or gap in the market with what you do. You explain what you do, what actually is your product and service, and how does it work. Explain what is the market, who are the people who are going to want this, and how many people are there, what are the dollars involved. That's followed by how are you going to get those people, how you're going to reach them and make them customers or users of your product or service. Explain the business model, how are you going to make money at this. Then traction and financial projections. How far have you gone? What kind of proof do you have that people want this? And how do you project that to grow out in the future? Usually the best form of traction is customers, but there are other things that you can do. Users engagement, depends on what your business is. And then what are the financial projections? How have you thought of that growing out in the future? That's followed by an analysis of what does the competition look like? What is the landscape out there? Explain who you guys are and why you think that you can really do this. What is the timeline that you think that's going to take to do this? And you wrap up with your ask. How much money are you asking for? What do you plan to use it for? Investors like and expect this format. You'll see a little bit of variation around the edges. Some slides will be more important in some businesses than others. Some may have more complicated products or business models, and one or two slides may move around in any given deck, but this is pretty much it. But again, investors really like and expect this format. There is a reason that the decks tend to all follow this structure. And again, that's because investors really, really like to see decks this way. Sometimes I'll get founders who ask me, well, aren't investors tired of seeing decks in this format? And the answer is no, they really do like it to look at it this way. And it's like this. When I talk to investors, they almost always say that when they're first talking to founders, they have a little checklist running in the back of their heads of all the things that they look for in companies that they invest in. So when you're talking to them, or when you're reviewing a deck, or when they're reviewing a deck, they're internally running that against what their internal checklist is to see if they want to have another conversation with you about your business. This deck structure follows the way that most investors keep their internal checklist. So as they're flipping through, they can go, yes, this is an industry I invest in, the product's at the right stage, the market size is good, et cetera, et cetera. When your deck is structured correctly, it makes it easy for an investor to say, yes, I want to meet with the founder. And then later, as you talk them through it and you go through the deeper questions, yes, I want to invest. They can go check, check, check. It makes it easy for the investor, which is what you want. Now, I want to note also that if you happen not to be a good fit for the investor, for whatever reason, and that's no statement on the merits of your business, you may not be a good fit for any number of reasons, whether it's wrong industry or you're at the wrong stage. But if they think it's interesting, having your deck structured this way also makes it easy for them to assess what other investors they know who may be a good fit and that they can refer you to. Now, while I've been talking about the basic structure of a deck and why it's structured this way, I don't want you to think that the point of this talk is just that a deck is a fill-in-the-blank exercise, because it's not. For example, I've seen a lot of companies who think that just because they're supposed to put in some statistics about their market, that they'll just put in the first market stats that they find and that's good. But that's not the point. Putting together a good deck requires a lot of thought about your business and the underlying issues that an investor is trying to understand about your business. Once you get beyond the initial top line questions about whether you are in the ballpark of something the investor may invest in, like in the right industry, right stage, right potential market, then you start getting into deeper questions like, do we feel there's really true product market fit? Is the timing right for this opportunity? Is this a team that we feel confident can pull this off? How does the founding team think about this business? Now, don't worry, these deeper questions are the topic of next week's video. But I wanted to put this out there before you all started, laying out the slides and sticking stuff on them, that it's not just about putting stuff on these slides. You want to think about what's on the slides as well as having all the right stuff in the right order. But again, that's the topic of next week's video. This was definitely an overview of the structure of a deck. We'll be diving into those deeper questions next week. But in the meantime, as always, if you have questions, I'd love to chat. So please feel free to send me an email or drop by my virtual office hours, which you can find on my website. Until then, friends, I look forward and happy fundraising.